Hi there, Mike MacArthur from the Oshkosh Public Library, ready for some more Librarian Learns. Intro. This is the series where I take a look at a piece of local Oshkosh history that I found interesting. And this is actually another time where I'm going to hand over the history telling to Mr. Lee Reiherzer of the Oshkosh Beer Blog. He's going to be talking about another interesting piece of Oshkosh's brewing and beer history, home brewing, and the history of the Society of Oshkosh Brewers, or the SOBs. Take it away, Lee.
Okay, so the history of homebrewing in Oshkosh goes back quite a way. There's some indication that there was homebrewing going on here as early as the 1870s, and it definitely was happening here in the early 1900s. But things really took off in 1920. 1920 is the beginning of Prohibition. So all the breweries close, beer is made illegal, but people in Oshkosh clearly are not going to go without their beer. So a lot of people take to making it at home, and home brewing just explodes here. Just about every grocery store in town was selling the ingredients for making homebrewed beer at home. Probably the leading figure at that time is a woman named Anna Windhauser. In 1925, she opened Oshkosh's first homebrew shop in Oshkosh on Main Street. And her store does exceptionally well. She sells everything you could need for setting up a brewery at home. She's selling barrels, bottles, all the equipment, all the ingredients, everything you'd need. That all goes to hell in 1933 for her when Prohibition ends and beer comes back and Oshkosh's breweries all come back online. And the next, 40 years or so is kind of like a downtime for home brewing here. Not a lot's going on because there's plenty of beer flowing around the city. But in 1972, Oshkosh's last of the big breweries closes. People's closes in 1972. And with that, home brewing starts gradually coming back. The only beer you can get here at that point is the, beer that's coming from somewhere else, and it's all pale, fizzy, yellow lager. And people, are not necessarily satisfied with that, at least not everybody. Home brewing starts kicking in again. But the problem with this at this point is home brewing is illegal. After Prohibition, one of the laws that came online was that home brewing on the federal level was made illegal. So you couldn't home brew, not without breaking the law. That changes beginning in 1977 when the U.S. Congressman from Oshkosh, William Steiger, introduces a bill to legalize homebrew on the federal level. That gets signed into law into 1978, and then that's really a starting point again for when homebrew starts taking off in Oshkosh. Throughout the 80s, you've got these groups of homebrewers around, and they're not really organized, but some of them start getting together. And in the early 1990s, a group, about a half dozen homebrewers, starts coming together. And in 1991, they decide that they're going to form a club. And on April 11th, 1991, is the first meeting of this club that ends up being called the Society of Oshkosh Brewers. Now, this is the pre-internet era, so this is kind of a time when homebrewing knowledge is mostly exchanged by word of mouth. There's a couple books out there that are fairly decent, but it's usually just homebrewers teaching one another how to homebrew. The SOBs get going. They start issuing a newsletter that they send out to all the club members. It's called the Brews Letter, and that's filled with homebrew recipes, some of their dubious beer stories, just typical stuff that homebrewers talk about. The club grows over the years, and they start meeting at various bars in town. J.J. Fiedler's was one of them, the Old Lizard Lounge. The club really starts having kind of an outsized influence on the beer culture in Oshkosh. They kind of agitate at some of these bars for them to put better beer on tap. So with the growth of the club, you start seeing the growth of craft beer in Oshkosh. Without really realizing what they were doing, they're kind of also hanging on to or extending the original tradition of brewing in Oshkosh. What a lot of these club members are brewing is a dark malt-forward beer, just like they were doing in the 1850s when the first breweries started coming around. The reason they're doing this is because Oshkosh's water really favors that sort of beer. And one of the club's slogans becomes upholding Wisconsin's and Oshkosh's brewing tradition. That becomes a theme for the club from then on. But there's also always been this kind of broad humor within the club. So the club's other tagline is anyone who brews their own beer is a real SOB. And the club gets known in the city of Oshkosh as the SOBs. You don't hear too many people calling them the Society of Oshkosh Brewers. Okay, so by the early 2000s, the club is really well established, but it's also struggling a little bit because now the internet has really come on. And people don't need to so much get together to find out how to homebrew. They don't have to be in contact with other homebrewers. You can have all these resources available online. The club starts heading in kind of a different direction at that point, and they begin having a plan for more public outreach. And part of that is an event they call Cask and Caskets. This was a few years in the making, and what the idea is to have a homebrew event or a beer event that is nothing but homebrew. There had never been one of these held in Wisconsin before. The club quickly runs into some trouble with the law. Wisconsin's beer laws kind of intercede with homebrewing. Even though it was legal on the federal level now, you couldn't take homebrew out of your house legally. You could share it with anybody in your home, but you couldn't take it outside of the home. So for a couple of years there, 2009 to 2011 essentially, the SOBs start trying to get this law changed so you can take homebrew out of the house. And in 2011, that works out. Wisconsin law gets changed. And in 2012, the SOBs have their first all homebrew festival. This is the first festival of this type in the state where the only thing you're going to drink there is homebrewed beer, mead, wine, and cider. And over the course of the next few years, the club has 6 more of these Cask and Caskets festivals. This led to quite a bit of growth in the club, and by 2015, there's anywhere between 40 and 60 members in the club itself. The SOBs end up becoming kind of a training ground for professional brewers. There's been probably about a dozen brewers overall that have come out of the SOBs that went into the professional ranks, and that's been really impactful here in Oshkosh. Jody Cleveland is the head brewer at Bare Bones. He's a SOB alumni. Zach Clark and Ian Wagner, who run Fifth Ward Brewing Company, are SOBs. Mike Schlosser, who had Highholder Brewing Company, is an SOB. And SOBs have gone to breweries all around the area. From 2010 on, the club has done really well. And then COVID happened. So for about a 2-year period there, all the SOB meetings had to be done online over Zoom. That's all changed now. So now the club is back to meeting every third Wednesday at O'Mara's Public House on Oregon Street. It's still upholding Oshkosh's brewing traditions. So the club's doing well.
My name is Scott Westfall. I'm the president of the Society of Oshkosh Brewers. Been a member of the club about 16 years now. So when I first moved up here, we had I think just one brewery here and a brewery or so up in Appleton. The landscape here has changed completely with all the breweries and the cidery and the meadery we have now. So many of the people working at these or brewing at these places have come from our club. We have a homebrew supply shop in town, which wasn't here when I started. The type of ingredients you can get has completely changed now. There's so much available. And now they make everything so easy for you. So from a homebrewing point of view, you've got every piece of equipment you could ever want, every ingredient you could ever want, and now there's YouTube videos everywhere. So there is no excuse not to homebrew now, because it is absolutely easy.
It seemed like it was an old man game from the outside in the past. My perception has changed quite a bit. Now it seems like it's got
every age level,
a revitalization, maybe in the last 3 or 4 years of like a new gen. And the people that were younger at the time, like their dad was an SOB, and they were like, that they were coming up with it. But now it's like we're a wider age range, I suppose, and
we're 21 and up.
But everybody's still chasing that.
Do you have any favorite memories or experiences with your time with the SOBs?
Wow. There are so many. I mean, we got a lot of good people helping out by raising money for the nonprofit in town here. So we did Cask and Caskets over the years, and we raised, I think when all is said and done over the years, we raised somewhere around $26,000 and we gave, that money went to the food pantries of Oshkosh and surrounding areas. So I think that was the funnest time that I've had. But
so hey, I learned something. If you like these videos, want to see more, hit like, hit subscribe. If you want to read more about Oshkosh's brewing history, you can check out one of Lee's books that he's written. You can check him out at the library, or you can visit his blog, the OshkoshBeerBlog.blogspot.com. Or you can look back at some of the other videos that I made with him in previous seasons of Librarian Learns. And with that, I'll see you later.